as I mentioned, to provide students with the foundation to succeed at school and beyond. But however, this kind of education, method of education has not been so popular yet in our country, as far as I know. So we need to improve our knowledge a few about this topic many times, so that we can have how to say fully understanding about that kind of education method. So for that reason, I don't want to talk about this much. So better we start this webinar soon and immediately listening and discuss about it later in the session with the expert speakers in the forum. We hope that through this presented speaker, we will have new perspective relating to our today topic, so that we can find other ways to solve problem as aforementioned. Finally, by Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, I inaugurate officially the webinar with theme of learning and pedagogy in STEM education. I wish you all a very successful webinar, but I apologize, unable to continue attending all the sessions because I got to go for at the Zoom channel. Thank you. Wabillahi taufiq wa hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Wait a minute, Dr. Iwan Taruna. We will take picture first, then you can leave this event.
Okay.
So, yeah, thank you very much for Dr. Iwan Taruna for giving a speech. And however, before we jump to our main session, we will have a photo session. Please prepare your camera on and the best pose, of course. Okay, when you're ready, give me thumbs so we can take a picture or screenshot. Okay, ready all? 1, 2, 3, cheers.
Next.
Okay, again, next. 1, 2, 3, cheers.
Next.
Okay, next. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Okay, next. This is the last.
Okay, the last.
Okay, the last one. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Iwan Taruna and all. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we reach our main session, let our prayer leader lead us to pray. So we will can say our blessing, that leading with Mr. Evan Prasetya. To Mr. Evan Prasetya, can you please?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anjar. Can you hear me, my voice?
Yes, I can hear your voice clearly.
Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, today, ladies and gentlemen, let us bow our head for a moment, pray to God Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, so that our international webinar can be precious to all of us. I will lead this prayer based on the teaching of Islam, and those who are not Muslim, you are please pray to according to each other your belief. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, hamdan syakirin, hamdan naimin. Hamdan nu'afi wa yukafi mazida ya Rabbana lakal hamdu kama yanbaghi liwajhikal karim wa adimi sultanik. Allahumma inna nas'aluka salamatan fid din wa afiyatan fil jasad wa siyadatan fil ilmi wa barakatan fi rizki wa taubatan qablal maut wa rahmatan indal maut wa ma'firatan ba'dal maut. Allahumma fir lana wa liwalidina wa lil muslimina wal muslimat wal mu'minina wal mu'minat al ahya minhum wal amwat innaka sami'un qaribun mujibud da'wat ya qadhiyal hajat. Ya Allah, today we gather here to bring about an international webinar, learning and pedagogical in STEM education. Make this international webinar as useful science assembly as medium of sharing and useful ideas, knowledge and experience of scholar researchers and students of various discipline. May the conference organized today benefit to our life, broaden our knowledge, sign our ideas, and let us to be successful, productive persons, which in turn will boost dignity of our nation. Ya Allah, guide us and bless our heart and our mind with the light of your guidance. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activity. help us to speak our mind clearly, help us to listen to each other, respect to each other, love each other so that we are included to the blessed person. Ya Allah, protect us from unintended temptation, show us the right path and give us knowledge and strength to perform a good things equally, so us to make it clear and the bad things and give us knowledge and strength to avoid them. Ya Allah, you are the one who can fulfill our doa. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzabannar. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Amin amin ya rabbal alamin. Thank you for the time, Mr. Anjar. Time is yours.
Thank you very
Assalamualaikum
much.
warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. Irfan Prasetyo. Ladies and gentlemen, beforehand, I would like to show you the slide of the rule for this teleconference event. Please share the slide. Can you share the slide? I cannot see it. Okay, I just want to highlight for all of the participants that the most important things that you must fill the attendance and feedback form, so you can get a certificate directly from the form. So please make attention to do that. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Without any further ado, now we are departing to our main session. This session will be led by our moderator, Mr. Bevo Wahono, PhD. First of all, let me introduce our moderator today, Mr. Bevo Wahono, PhD. He graduated for his bachelor at State University of Bengkulu and his doctoral degree at National Taiwan Normal University. His expertise is about STEM education. For the professional experience, he earned fastest graduate from National Taiwan Normal University and producing more than 6 articles published in Scopus Index in Q1 and Q2. As you see in the slide shares, okay, there is the short curriculum vitae for Mr. Bevo Wahono, PhD. So now, please welcome our moderator today, Mr. Bevo Wahono, PhD. Time's yours.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anjar Putra Utomo, for the nice introduction. Well, good morning, everyone. In particular, those participants are coming from South Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, and other parts of Asia regions. And good evening for Professor Jillian at Minnesota, United States of America, as well as other participants from other countries at Europe, USA, and Latin America. And then I'm really excited to be here to serve you as a moderator in our international webinar today. As a master ceremony noticed before that this is a sort of a kind of a real international webinar because the participants now are coming from more than 50 countries over the world. And okay, ladies and gentlemen, our topic today is international webinar, learning and pedagogical in STEM education. To deal with this topic, here we have 3 special guests already. As a glance, they are Professor Jillian Rohrich from Department of Curriculum and Instruction, University of Minnesota, USA. And then, good evening, Prof. Then, Dr. Kennedy Chan from Faculty of Education, the University of Hong Kong. Good morning, Dr. Kennedy. And finally, Dr. Erlia Narulita from Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, University of Jember. Good morning, Dr. Erlia. Well, for your information, this webinar presentation will be divided into two sessions. The first session will be delivered by Professor Gillian, about 30 minutes presentation, and about 30 minutes for the Q&A time. Then afterwards, will be parallelly delivered by Dr. Kennedy and Dr. Erlia. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to introduce the first presenter. Please, person in charge to show Professor Gillian CV up. Wait a minute. Okay, here you are. She is, wait a minute, go back. Okay, go back to the first slide. Yeah, her name is Professor Gillian Rohridge, PhD. She is a professor, a lecturer, and researcher at the University of Minnesota, the United States of America. Then she bachelor degree have graduates from chemistry, Department of Chemistry and Mathematics, University of Southampton, UK. And for the master degree, graduated from Department of Physical Chemistry, University of Arizona in 1993. And then for her doctoral degree, graduated from Department of Teaching and Teacher Education, University of Arizona in 2002. Okay, and she have wrote more than 90 journals and more than 20 books. These are only some example for her paper published. And then also next, some professional position. For example, already for 10 years as a professor in University of Minnesota, and also some graduate research assistant in science education, and some other professional organization, for example, Association for Science Teacher Education, European Science Education Research Association, National Association of Research in Science Teaching, and National Science Teacher Association. And I also read her CV before, some others awesome CV. For example, he have been as associate director of a STEM Education Center since 2012 to 2015, and also she got some honors and awards. For example, from the CEHD Marty and Jack Rossman Awards, and also Council of Crowded Student Understanding Faculty Awards, and also Outstanding Graduate Student Teaching Awards, Outstanding Science Educator Award 2020, and also she was as a president of Association for Science Teacher Education, Director North Central Association for Science Teacher Education, and so on. What a great CV, wonderful. Then Professor Gillian, time is yours.
Thank you. It's an honor to meet you all. I'm just going to share my screen here quickly so we can see my slides. All right, hopefully you can see the slides okay, yes?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So one of the, I'm actually sitting in my office in my house right now. We're doing all of our teaching and our research online because of the COVID-19 virus. So I spend a lot of my time on Zoom, and sometimes I'm still not very good at it. My students have to help me fix some things. So hopefully we won't have any problems today. So, all right, so we're going to talk a little bit about integrated STEM. And I know that earlier we'll talk later about biotechnology, but I'm also going to bring in some biotechnology themes. And I'm pretty excited to share some of this work with you. It's very new work that we've just started, a brand new grant that we have that I want to share a little bit with you. And I look forward to hearing some of your ideas as well, because this is new work, not finished work. And I'm really hoping to hear some partners and collaboration, maybe from some of the things that I talk about. So we'll just start off a little bit with STEM, but also and then transition into the biotechnology space. There's a whole variety of different models and ways that we think about STEM, which makes it difficult sometimes for teachers to know what to do. One of the most common ways that people think about STEM is just as the separate disciplines. So science separate to technology, separate to engineering, separate to mathematics. And I don't think schools in Indonesia are particularly any different to in the United States and other areas in the world. I've had the pleasure of visiting some of the other countries that were on that screen, but most often what we have is science and mathematics classrooms. It's pretty rare that we have a technology class or an engineering class. Sometimes we have those, but the most common are actually science and mathematics. So the technology and the engineering have been missing for our K-12 students for a long time. And we see a variety of approaches to dealing with this, one of which is to create new courses. So this is another model that we see quite a bit in the United States, is combining 2 or 3 or even 4 of the disciplines. The example here is science and technology, but it could be mathematics and engineering or science and engineering, and creating a new course. That's very difficult to fit into our curriculum. We already have a very set curriculum. I know in Indonesia you have a national curriculum that all of the teachers follow. And so creating new courses is not necessarily the easiest way to go about doing this. And it's actually not that common in the United States to actually have a STEM course. So what we focused on in our work is this model. And in this model, we're saying we know that our science teachers are expected to integrate engineering. And so we look at our science instruction and our science curriculum, and we look for ways that we can integrate technology, engineering, and mathematics into the existing curriculum. So we're not creating a new course, but we're modifying the kinds of activities and the kinds of experiences that students might have in the course. So as I talk through the examples here in my talk, that's really the model that I'm thinking of. We're working with science teachers and helping science teachers to bring other disciplines into their classroom, not creating a new curriculum and not creating a new course. So that's where we'll focus. So very briefly, a definition of STEM education. It's one of the things as we work in our work and we publish, or it's asked to be very clear about our definitions. And so this is the definition that we work from, which is drawn very much from Kelly and Knowles' 2006 publication. So we see STEM education as the approach to teaching the STEM content of 2 or more of the STEM domains, using the STEM practices within an authentic context. So a real world problem for the purpose of connecting those subjects to develop solutions to the real world problem and enhance student learning. That's when you start to think about it, that's really broad. Any 2 disciplines, something about a real world problem, something about connecting. It's incredibly broad. And so a lot of our early work in STEM, some of the publications you saw on the screen, are starting to get more detail into that. And so this is some of the slightly more detailed ways that we start to think about what integrated STEM should look like. And so it starts with contextualization through a meaningful, motivating, and engaging authentic problem. The second one is that we want our learners, our students, to be engaged in engineering practices to address that problem. Well, as what all engineers do in their professional work, and we want students to have these experiences, that you learn from failure. Failure is actually celebrated in engineering as a way to improve a design and iterate, and that constant improvement process. And we want students to have that experience in the work that they do, It's also good for their mindsets and their self-efficacy in their learning. We all fail at some point, whether it's on a physics test or whether it's a history essay. We have things that we can learn and do better. So it's a very positive mindset for students to have in their future lives. We need to make sure that whatever we're doing, that the students are applying and learning science or mathematics content. If we're doing this in a science classroom, we can't do something instead of science. We have to do something that enhances the science learning. We have to make sure that we're teaching with student-centered pedagogies. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're promoting 21st century thinking skills in our instruction. As we move into the future, with jobs changing at the rate they are and the many unknown things and grand challenges in the world, it's very important that that we're able to have students be able to problem solve and work in teams and collaborate. So where do we find these real world engaging problems? That's where I want to spend most of our time, is how do we find these things? They're not in our textbooks. We don't have those. Where do we go about looking for that? Our textbooks are not going to be the answer here. So this takes quite a bit of work on the part of our teachers to think through some of these things. So just one example of one of the places we look, this is the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. This gives us some really broad grand challenges and real world problems that our teachers can start to think about as context for engaging their students in STEM. These are really big things to think about and need breaking down. Climate change is a really huge topic that you could take a whole degree program to look at. So we have to think about breaking those down. So we sometimes look to current events. Just got a couple of things there, as we're all right now across the globe dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. We have a lot of curriculum being developed around health issues, the virus, mathematical modeling of how the virus develops and is transmitted. There are many, many innovative ways that people have used that. The other image is a bridge collapse that was in Minneapolis, the city where I live. This was in 2007. Unfortunately, several people died in this incident, and it created a current event where there was a lot of curriculum at that point around bridge design and thinking about security and safety of our roads and our infrastructure. The problem with current events is they change. And so teachers are constantly having to reinvent and redesign curriculum with that. So it's a good way to do it, but it's an exhausting way to do it. And so one of the other ways that we've done this a lot in our work at the University of Minnesota is to engage in partnerships with our scientists and engineers. So I'm in the College of Education. So I work a lot with my faculty colleagues in either the College of Science and Engineering or the College of Biological Sciences. And these are just some of the examples of some of the work that we've done or that we've engaged with our teachers. Zooniverse is an example of citizen science, and that's something that is freely available. So any of you anywhere in the world could access this site. And as an example in Zooniverse, there are many, many, many thousands, hundreds of thousands of images of galaxies that students can engage in and help scientists to identify and categorize those. So it's something you could certainly do in your classrooms. The Center for Sustainable Polymers is working a lot around green chemistry. And so they're working on biodegradable plastics to replace those ubiquitous plastic water bottles and things that we all have in our lives. And we've developed a variety of experiments that students can engage in around biodegradable polymers as an example of one of those engagements. And then the other image is we do a lot of work with school gardens, particularly with our younger students, really engaging them in agricultural processes and how they can think about growing their food and all of the science and mathematics and things that go along with that. So there's a variety of ways that we do that. But what I want to spend most of my time on is sharing with you this new project that I'm very excited about. It's a new grant that we got on September the 1st, so it's very new. It's actually the first time that I've talked about this in a public setting. So interested to get some feedback and hear some of your thoughts. So the project that we have is it's an NSF Engineering Research Center grant, and these are awarded by our National Science Foundation, and they support what they refer to as convergent research. So convergent science is another way to think about integration. And it also supports education and technology translation. Technology translation is the business end of this. So thinking about how we move some of the science and the engineering into business and industry and think about how we patent that and move it out to have these societal impacts. A big part of the work of engineering research centers is not just that foundational science and engineering, but also to address the engineering workforce development needs that our country has, and to create a culture of diversity of inclusion where all participants have mutual benefit in learning from participation in the project. So my work on the grant is in the engineering, primarily in the engineering workforce development aspects of the work, but also a little bit with culture of diversity and inclusion. So I'll talk a little bit about those in a moment. So the specific project that we have is called ATP Bio. So it's the Center for Advanced Technologies for Preservation of Biological Systems. And the lead institution is the University of Minnesota. So I'm Dr. John Bishop, who's in our Institute for Engineering Medicine, is the lead PI, and I'm the co-PI on the project, leading up all of the education pieces of the work. But we also partner with Massachusetts General Hospital, which is in Boston, Massachusetts, so out on the East Coast, the University of California at Berkeley, and the University of California at Riverside. So we've got some really exciting partnerships and collaborations at different institutions across the United States. And that's our one sentence there on ATP Bio, to say the goal is to stop biological time by designing methods to cryogenically cool, hold, and rewarm living materials without harm, extending our ability to bank and transport them. That's a lot of words that is probably like, wow, I wonder what that actually means, right? Stop biological time sounds a little bit like sci-fi. So I'm going to unpack that a little bit and give you an idea of kind of the science and the engineering, and then share how we're trying to think about getting that into the classroom. So this is, I won't talk about all of these, but these are some of the hopeful societal impacts and the engineering work that will come out of this grant. So thinking about cell therapies, what are the new drugs of tomorrow and how do we store them safely and transport them safely? As we start to think about COVID-19 vaccines, right, we have a lot of questions about how that can work. And some of the cooling processes and transportation processes that our engineers are working on are going to be very helpful in that regard. One of the biggest ones that's the easiest, I think, for us to wrap our heads around is organ transplants or tissue transplants. And so right now, with the transplant industry, if you are in the unfortunate position or a family member who needs to get a new heart or a new kidney or a new liver, you have a very small window from harvesting that organ, less than 24 hours, to transport it from the deceased person to the recipient of that organ. And what our scientists are aiming to be able to do is, through cryogenic cooling, is to be able to have that organ be able to be preserved for 3, 4, 5 days, which gives a lot more opportunity then for those organs to reach the necessary donors. It's a pretty crazy scientific process to do it, and they've been had some success with livers so far. So that's one of the big goals there that they're working on. New drugs that could come out of this. This, for any of you who do work in the area of biotechnology, these transgenic lines of mice where you have to maintain populations to keep a particular gene mutation for different scientific work. We would be able to actually cool and store some of these, and you wouldn't have to maintain these kinds of populations in your laboratories to do this. So a variety of things there. We will be able to bank biological specimens to protect for biodiversity and things like that as we deal with climate change, things like that. We can think about trauma. If we're able to bank and preserve tissues and cells, you can imagine that in a medical emergency, someone bringing skin that could cover straight away, things like that. And the last one that's definitely the most sort of out there sci-fi one that we have is thinking about potentially space travel and some of the kinds of therapies and things that we might need to send on a mission to Mars. So there's a whole variety of things in there, and I can't claim any intellectual space in here. I'm not one of the engineers or the scientists, but my job is to think about how do we take this and translate this and help to get kids excited about entering this field. And so in essence, right, we've got a lot of science ideas, we've got a lot of engineering ideas here that our scientists are working on, and trying to engage our students in a variety of different ways here. All right, I'm not going to talk anymore about the science and engineering because I'll get myself into trouble because I don't necessarily understand all of it. As a chemist, it's kind of a scary space sometimes. So, scary diagram here, but all I really want to point out is in addition to the space that you see with all the science that I shared, is that we also have these other spaces here where education is a large part of what we're doing there. I am going to try and figure out why my phone is buzzing here in the middle of the seminar, because that is driving me crazy. All right, turned it off. It won't distract me anymore. All right, so the education part. When I talk about engineering workforce, why do we care about that, and how does STEM fit into this problem? So when we think about the jobs of the future, this is just one graphic. There's many ways that we can look at this data, and this is data from the United States, but I'm sure it's very similar in your countries as well. We see the STEM fields increasing at a significantly higher rate compared to non-STEM fields, particularly when you start to look at those bigger percent increases. I don't know if you're able to read on whatever device you're on, but that 62% increase is biomedical engineering. The 36% is medical scientists. So there's a huge growth in this area of biotechnology and biomedical engineering. And that's a large part of what our work is, to make sure that we're preparing the future scientists who are going to address the kinds of problems that we're trying to tackle here. The problem, of course, is that we are not preparing enough students to do these things. And so this graphic simply shows a pipeline. So when we think about our students moving from elementary school, so our 5-6-year-olds as they start school and they work through our system, we're hoping that we can prepare more and more of them to come through this pipeline and have a 4-year degree, a bachelor's degree in a scientific field, be it biology, be it biomedical engineering, be it electrical engineering, et cetera, to be able to help address some of the challenges that we're trying to address in ATP Bio. The problem is we lose students along the way, often because they're not interested. This doesn't seem like something they want to do. Sometimes because they don't have the right skill set. Maybe they're not strong enough in mathematics, things like that, that they don't have content knowledge to do it. There's a whole variety of reasons that students drop out. And so part of our engineering workforce is to try and plug some of these leaks along the way. How can we have students be better prepared, be more motivated to learn? And the diversity and cultural inclusion piece is because when we think about who leaves this pipeline, it is more likely that female students, for example, leave the pipeline. Engineering is about a 78% male-dominated field, just as one statistic to think about that. And so in our work, we are trying to think differently about that pipeline model. And so we really want to think about, rather than a pipeline, the single experience that all students have, there's just one way to become an engineer or a biologist or a physicist. It's actually more of an organic network or a fiber optic cable. There are many different ways in which students can enter a STEM profession. And so what we're trying to do in our work is to diversify the experiences that students have by offering different opportunities in their classrooms, out of school, maybe in museums, all the different ways that we can engage our students in science and engineering. But we also know that whatever experiences we come up with, they are going to be experienced differently by each student, right? Each one of us could sit in the same lecture. You're all listening to me right now, and you're all taking away different things from this, right? Depending on what your interests and your backgrounds are. And that's true for our students. And so part of our research that we're just starting right now is to really think about STEM identity. So do students identify with becoming a scientist or an engineer? Because if they don't, they're not going to pursue that as a pathway. So as we think about STEM identity, we're really asking the question of identity. Who do I think I am? Who can I be? Do I belong in this space? How do other people see me as this? So do students perceive themselves as fitting into the engineering profession? Do they think others think that they're able to be an engineer? These things matter to students. And so the example I have here, this was from a Google search for the word engineer, the images that pulled up. And these images suggest to me that engineers work with hard hats on some kind of job site. That might not be something I'm interested in. So if that's how I perceive of engineering, I may not identify with that. Also, as I look at these images, if I'm a student of color, so if I'm an African-American student, all I see here is white faces. I may say, I don't identify. This is not a space where I belong. So that identity work that we're going to be doing is really important. And so we're really drawing on, this is Heidi Cologne's work, if any of you are familiar with identity spaces, but really thinking about how students see themselves as having competence. Do they have the confidence and the self-efficacy and that they can do engineering or do science? Do they also then see themselves as being recognized? Are they recognized by their teacher? Are they recognized by their peers and others as being a scientist and engineer? And then have these opportunities to show their understanding. So it's not just about the competence. It's not just about the knowledge. It's about all of these other facets that fit in there. So let's see if we can get ourselves back to the biotechnology piece, right? Because I've got to try and translate all of that science into classroom activities. I've also got to think about identity and how that might matter, how we present the science. And so this comes from some of the work on gender equity in science and STEM. And we know that we have a problem with gender equity in the field. It's worse in some areas like physics and engineering than it is in an area like, say, biology, where we do see pretty much gender equality in that space. But as we look at the way that we represent our disciplines to our students, whether this is in middle school or high school or whatever grade level you might teach, males orient towards this focus on things. Right? It's a technical orientation. It's about rockets. It's about the futuristic car. Can I make the car go faster? Can it go from 0 to 60 in a shorter time than another car? We're thinking about who can build the tallest building, right? So that's the Burj Khalifa there. Did have the very spoiled person that I am. I've had a chance to go to the top of that, right? But it's just a building. There's nothing really special about it other than it's the tallest one in the world, right? But that motivation, that competition, is very empowering for many of our male students. It is not empowering for many of our female students. So that common focus we have actually turns women off from engineering, and they don't identify with that. What we do know about our female learners and how they think about and identify with science and STEM is that we need to have a focus on people and community. And so the areas where our female students are more likely to gravitate are things like health, the environment, those kinds of topics. So they're more worried about vaccines and saving people, sustainable food, right? Like the image on the top there is how we grow food in Minnesota. So we have fresh vegetables in the winter. Believe it or not, Anjo, when you come, you will get fresh vegetables that have not traveled across the world, even in the middle of winter. So ways we can do that, right? Alternative energy, those kinds of things, right? So, and really for us, biotechnology fits nicely at the intersection there. When we think about biotechnology, we can't do engineering if there isn't a technology to worry about, but we have that context there with the biotechnology of sort of bringing together health, environment, and also these products and technologies and things that we need to orient on. So we're very hopeful that this biotechnology focus we have in this new project is really going to help us to foster growing and positive identities for all of our students in these fields. So biotechnology, there's so many different disciplines on here, and I know earlier we'll give you a better perspective of biotechnology in a little bit than I will, so I'll just sort of set the groundwork for her to bring in her more technical expertise than I have. But so it's a very broad discipline, there's a lot of spaces, but we're really harnessing cellular and biomolecular processes to do something in the real world, so to help improve the health and lives of people in all sorts of different ways. All right? And some examples that we've seen and we've done things in our classroom, STEM connections that we're able to do from it. But I look forward to when it is common and we don't have to worry about it. Then I could be with you in Gemba.
Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you for your explanation.
Thank you, Ms. Puji. We got another one question from Chandra Ari. The question is, we got new in situation that COVID-19 came in this year, how to bring some lesson that need experiment in the laboratorium. Experiment is very important in science learning, but now mostly we have class by online or virtual. Please share your opinion and suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so we talked a little bit about some of the kits. I'll put this in the chat here as well. we use something called Fet Simulations. I'll type that in the chat so people can see how that's spelled. So Fet, P-H-E-T. They are free, available that students are able. You have to have some kind of device. Some of them will work on a mobile device. Some might require a laptop. It depends on how they're programmed. But there's a whole variety of those that you can do. Some physics experiments. There's some chemistry ones that you can do virtually. It's not the same, obviously, as manipulating the equipment. But you can get some very interesting data. There's some really good ones for like force, motion acceleration, some really nice ones with electrical circuits that students can build the electrical circuits on the screen. There's some with chemical reactions. You can change the concentration of the different reactions and look at how it changes the products. Gas laws, you can change the pressure, volume, and temperature and things of gas containers. So that's a really useful one that a lot of our teachers have been using. We're starting to see a growing set of things online that other teachers are sharing with each other. Hopefully this time next year, we're not still doing this, but there is a growing wealth of information out there on how to do it. But it's a lot of virtual labs. I know at the university level, a lot of my colleagues are working more on data analysis. So they're providing data sets for their students. And so instead of collecting the data, the students have data and they're still able to go through whether it's graphing analysis or the kinds of things that we would want them to do in the lab. And sometimes that can be a benefit because a hands-on lab can be very disparate. We focus so much on the doing and the collecting the data. We don't spend the energy on the data analysis and coming to conclusions. And so what some of my colleagues have told me is actually they believe in a little bit improves student learning because there's more focus on the connection from practice to theory, right, and making sense of data and less on whether or not I can work the burette carefully and those kinds of things. So existing data sets and simulations is a big piece of it.
Thank you, Prof. Julian. The use of Pck simulation is a good idea, I think, and then I have done some lesson by Pck simulation, and if everyone would like to use Pck simulation in this pandemic era, you can try to use it. Yeah, thank you, Prof. Julian. And we have another question from Ecuador. Yeah. Latin America, right? Ecuador.
Yeah.
The question is, 1 minute. Good night, everybody from Ecuador. From your perspective and experiences, how can I teach science on COVID-19 time? With no laboratories, no excursions, it's a bit difficult. What do you think?
Right. So we've provided some examples. It's good to listen to the questions. I'm able to maybe think up some more examples as I'm listening to the questions. The other thing we've seen people do quite a bit that our teachers have done is to use video. So there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that could be little science experiments. There's some that the teachers have made themselves. They've been able to be in their classroom and they record something. And so students are able to start to develop explanations and things for the kinds of things that they're seeing on video. I've seen a lot of good use there of things like that, where it could be taking a everyday experience and asking the students, okay, using your understanding of Newton's laws, explain what just happened, right? It could be a collision, right? Those kinds of things. I've seen ones with explosions, right? Using your understanding of gas laws, explain what happened here, that kind of thing. That's another way to try and engage kids. And anything you get kids on their phone with YouTube, you can usually catch their attention. That's for sure.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Prof. 1 minute. Okay, we still have about 5 minutes for Q&A. I got another question, but this is still in Indonesian language. I need to translate it. Wait a minute. How to conduct STEM activity if in particular area, for example, in remote area in Indonesia, doesn't has any technological equipment? Yeah, that's the question.
Right. We try and do a lot of our work, so it does not require expensive equipment. We certainly have things that we do that are more high-end, like 3D printers and those kinds of things. But a lot of what we do with our students, we try and do things that we can do with supplies like paper and straws and things like that, which may not always be accessible, right, to people in remote areas, but there's a variety of ways that we do try and engage in that. The other thing to remember is engineering doesn't always mean we have to build a product. Many engineers build something, a wind turbine, whatever, a bridge, right, those kinds of things. But engineers also design processes. And so there's ways to engage students in developing a process for something that doesn't require any materials at all in understanding. So as an example, one of the problems we do with students is around sorting trash. So if you have a pile of trash, what would be the best procedure to go about sorting out things that can be recycled? So if I give you a bag of all of the different kinds of plastic, right? There's 7 different kinds of plastic, right? And how would we sort them? That's a challenge that students can work with without any equipment, and they're applying ideas such as density, for example, that can help sort some of those things out. So focusing on engineering processes as well as products is definitely one way to do it.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Gillian. I think this is the end of we still have 2 questions, but you have to address it first before we end the session. The first one from Ir Nur Khairia from Senior High School Muhammadiyah in Pandaan, Indonesia. The question is, how do we start STEM learning or STEM activity in senior high school, especially at 9th grade? Is it right if we start STEM learning in the end of semester? Perhaps the question about the appropriate time to conduct a STEM activity.
Right. It takes a lot more time to teach doing a STEM activity, right? Many of the examples that we have, they complement the science that you're teaching, but they take more time to do that. And I've seen many of our teachers, and I've seen this in other countries as well, will put these STEM challenges in once after you've got through the curriculum, right? So it might be come April, right? First it will be April, May. Once all of our testing is done, there's a lot more freedom to do some things in the curriculum. So we do see that quite a bit. What we really think about is helping the teachers to decide we can't do STEM all of the time, right? It wouldn't work. Not every topic lends itself to STEM and it takes too much time. So developing an understanding of what's the best topic to add a few days to do something with STEM. And I know Pram's on here somewhere. Pram did his dissertation around STEM PCK. And I know that Dr. Kennedy is going to talk about PCK in the next session. We really are starting to think that way of using our pedagogical content knowledge to make these decisions, right? If I've only got time to do STEM a couple of times, what's the right content to do this, right? And be able to make smart decisions, because the kinds of things I've been talking about, you can't do them all the time. It wouldn't work, right? So making smart decisions, and I think PCK is an interesting way to start to think about that.
Thank you, Prof. And this is the last question from Iis Nur Aisyah, Department of Biology Education, University of Jember, Indonesia. She said that, what do you think if we conduct a STEM learning or STEM activity together or combined with other approach or another learning model? What do you think?
Okay. Yeah.
So
and in many ways,
with PGBL or 6E learning model or others.
Right. And in many ways, what we're calling STEM and integrated STEM is really based on a lot of these existing models. So when I think about PBL is a larger set of which I would say STEM is a subset of PBL. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're different. PBL could broaden out from STEM, but STEM is PBL. It's repackaging of some ideas that we've had in education for a long time. There are so when I was learning to teach, it was the 5 E's. I've seen the 7E model, all sorts of different E's now, right? But those, you could do that for engineering as well, right? I've seen many lessons that will use the 5 E's or 7 E's from an engineering perspective, because all of these pedagogies are rooted in what we know about learning and what we know about good teaching, right? So I actually see STEM as a way of bringing all of these ideas together. It's not that new, it's just repackaged.
Okay, I think it's enough. Thank you, Professor Gillian, for the wonderful responses and nice presentation. Now we move to the second session that will be delivered by Professor Gillian. It's supposed to be evening in your country, right? Is it right?
Yes.
If you would like to leave this session, it's our pleasure. But
okay. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for getting up early to accommodate me being
Prof.
at night here.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Many thanks. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
We move to the second session that will be delivered by Dr. Kennedy, Dr. Erlia, parallelly. Person in charge, please. Your people. Mute your microphone. Okay, thank you. Wait a minute, we are still waiting for CV of Dr. Elia and Dr. Kennedy. Okay, Dr. Kennedy first. Okay, here it is. Dr. Kennedy Chance Kamho. He is from Faculty of Education, University of Hong Kong, and next, okay, is bachelor degree, got it in 2005 from Department of Biology, University of Hong Kong, and for the master degree, right, 2008 from Department Philosophy in Science in the same university, the University of Hong Kong, and finally from the doctoral degree in 2014. In the Philosophy in Science in the same university, the University of Hong Kong. And he have wrote so many publications, more than 25 journals, and most of the journal published in reputable journal. And also he have wrote more than 10 books. This is only example for your information. Okay, next. Some position, for example, he have 5 years as a lecturer or a professor in the University of Hong Kong, and then Hong Kong PhD Fellowship, Hong Kong Research Grant Council, and some professional organization, for example, Teaching Exchange Fellowship at the University of Hong Kong, Doris Simran Cambridge Haggis Hall Fellowship, and also I think it is also in the University of Hong Kong. No? Okay, that's all. And then the second from, wait a minute, we still waiting for Dr. Elia CV directly or okay. Later, okay, later. we can do it later. Okay.
Shall I?
So, Dr. Kennedy, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the lovely introduction. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. And I hope all of you are well and healthy in the time of pandemic. And thank you very much for joining my talk. And I'm very glad to have a chance to share my research on pedagogical content knowledge. And I'm from the University of Hong Kong. To begin with, I want to ask all of you a question. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word PCK? Probably for the audience, you can also share some of your thoughts through the chat function. Maybe you were thinking about content, pedagogy, or you may be thinking about teacher knowledge. You may also be thinking about summon, professional, amalgam, or for the maths colleagues, you may be thinking about mathematics knowledge for teaching, or you may also be thinking about technological pedagogical content knowledge. And here I would like to share with you the photo that represents the first word that comes to my mind when I hear the word PCK. What do you think is the first word that comes to my mind when I hear the word PCK? Fussy. And another picture that I would like to represent my feeling about PCK is this picture, which is showing the elusiveness of PCK. And hopefully this talk will introduce to you a little bit more about PCK and how PCK is investigated empirically. My talk will focus on two questions. The first question is, what is PCK? I will be talking a little bit more about the origins of the PCK, and I will sketch the major scholarly debate about the PCK concepts in the science education field. And I will describe the progress towards consensus by highlighting the consensus models that is emerged from the Pck Summit. And I will also discuss issues about how PCK can be investigated empirically, particularly by drawing upon a recent review chapter that I have published. And I will be talking about the existing approaches in investigating PCK, the issues, the challenges, and the opportunity. To begin with, I think all of you know that Suman introduced the idea of pedagogical content knowledge in his AERA presidential address. He argued that PCK goes beyond the subject matter knowledge to the dimension of subject matter knowledge for teaching. Essentially, Suman was thinking about the questions, what knowledge distinguish a physics teacher from a physics expert? And what knowledge distinguish a physics teacher from a history teacher? Another very important argument is that Suman believed that teachers consist of their own professional knowledge base, which is the unique province of knowledge processed only by the teacher, but not by scientists or other people. In his conceptualization, he conceptualized there are 7 categories of teacher professional knowledge, including content knowledge, general pedagogical knowledge, curriculum knowledge, knowledge of learners and their characteristics, knowledge of educational context, knowledge of educational ends. And the most important category of knowledge is PCK, pedagogical content knowledge. For Suman, PCK is a special amalgam of content and pedagogy that is uniquely the province of teachers, their own special forms of professional understanding. Suman elaborated what PCK means to him, and PCK includes knowledge of the ways of representing and formulating a subject that make it comprehensible to others, and an understanding of what makes the learning of specific topics easy or difficult, the conceptions and preconceptions that students bring with them to the learning. To summarize Suman's idea, PCK is one category or domains of teacher knowledge within the professional knowledge base for teaching. And for Suman's, PCK is specific to a particular topic. And PCK concerns the teaching of a particular topic, and it comprises two key components: knowledge of representing and formulating the subject matter, and knowledge of specific students, preconceptions or conceptions, and learning difficulties. Suman's ideas is very well received by teacher educators and science teacher educator, as well as science education researcher. However, educators and also researchers disagree with what exactly PCK is. And here I'm going to outline the scholarly debate about the PCK concepts. The first debate we solved around the epistemological status of PCK. Some regard PCK as a form of knowledge. Others believe that PCK should be a skill. Still others think that PCK should be a dispositions. And this is also complicated by the idea of what kinds of knowledge. Some researchers take a more static view of knowledge, viewing what is known as something that a person possesses in his mind as knowledge, whereas others take a more dynamic view regarding knowing as part of their action. There is another debate about whether PCK is a standalone body of knowledge. Some believe that PCK cannot be separated from other domains or categories of knowledge, such as subject matter knowledge or pedagogical knowledge, and they are subscribing to an integrative model. Whereas others believe that PCK should be categorized as a unique category or domains of knowledge on its own right, and they are subscribing to a transformative model, saying that PCK is a standalone category of knowledge and is more than some of its parts. There is also debate about exactly what is the components of PCK. Some believe that PCK should comprise cognitive abilities such as assessment knowledge, knowledge of students, curriculum knowledge, knowledge of instructional strategy, whereas others are not satisfied with only cognitive component and arguing that non-cognitive attributes should also be included in PCK. From such perspective, they added affective components such as orientations, teacher beliefs about teaching science within the PCK concept. And you can see a diversity of model in the field of science education, including the very well-known Magnuson model, which comprises 5 PCK components. And from the South Africa, we have the topic-specific PCK model from Marisa Rolik and her colleagues. And we also have the Pentagon model from the US. Another notable debate is about the grain size or the specificity of PCK. Some researchers highlight the generic nature of PCK, thinking that PCK should be general in nature, whereas others contend that the value of PCK lies in its topic specificity. And still others think that teachers should also require PCK for disciplinary practice. For example, PCK for argumentation, PCK for model and modeling, which encompasses knowledge to help students to understand the authentic activity of a discipline and the way knowledge is developed in a particular field and the development that represent a sophisticated understanding of how the field works. There is also debate about the possessions level of or the ownership levels of PCK. Some researchers think that PCK should exist at the individual level, whereas others think that PCK should exist at the group level, and something that PCK is personal and private in nature, and others believing that despite the idiosyncratic nature of individual PCK, we can still find commonality across a group of teachers, identifying what they call collective PCK. And some researchers even go a little bit further to articulate the idea of indispensable or canonical PCK. For example, indispensable PCK refer to the part of PCK that can be applied to any teacher in any teaching context for teaching a given topic, whereas others also talk about canonical PCK, which is widely agreed upon and formed through research or collective expert wisdom or practice. Finally, this is the debate of how PCK can be investigated. Some researchers taking a more cognitive perspective believe that PCK can be investigated independently outside of the classroom context. Whereas others researchers taking a more situated perspective, believing that PCK can only be studied in terms of how it is enacted in a specific classroom context. And this debate about the concepts of PCK prompted Sandra Abel in her reviews of studies on science teacher knowledge to label PCK as pre-science. And inevitably, the divergent views in understanding and interpreting the PCK concept have restricted its utility in research, teacher education, and policy. And it's very noteworthy that PCK is not explicitly mentioned in Australian Professional Standards for Teacher, England and Well Teachers Standard Document, or the US K-12 Science Educational Framework. And researchers in the field of PCK are highly aware of these problems, and there has been progress towards consensus in PCK concepts. For example, to move the field forward, Professor Sandra Abel attempted to identify consensus view about the nature of PCK through her critical analysis of the article published in the first special issues of International Journal of Science Education. The four commonality across the articles in terms of the views of PCK is that PCK is a distinct domains of knowledge that involve transformation of other types of knowledge. Although PCK has inherent close link with other knowledge category, it can still be distinguished from other knowledge categories, such as subject matter knowledge. And other consensus is that PCK comprises discrete knowledge component. However, when these components are applied in practice, these knowledge components are integrated and blended together. She also finds that researchers agree that PCK can develop over time as a result of teaching experiences. And finally, content is regarded as central to PCK, and PCK is for teaching particular content. Another breakthrough in reaching a consensus view about PCK in the field of science education is the first PCK Summit held in Colorado. It comprises a group of researchers in PCK field. And collectively, an important outcome of the first PCK Summit in Colorado is the creation of a consensus model for teacher professional knowledge and skills, including PCK. And here shows the big model, which is very complicated. And probably I can give all of you about 10 seconds to have a look at this model. And I would also want you to find out where PCK is located in this teacher professional knowledge and skills model. Can all of you find the positions of PCK in this professional knowledge and skill model? As you can see from this model, PCK is actually distinguished from different knowledge domains and knowledge bases. So we have the teacher professional knowledge base at the top of the model, which includes assessment knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, content knowledge, knowledge of students, and curricular knowledge. And PCK is also distinguished from the topic-specific professional knowledge, which is canonical in nature. And PCK is repositioned in this model and is called personal PCK and personal PCK and skills. And then this model also has a definitions accompanying this model. And this is the definitions of personal PCK and personal PCK and skills. And if I read out these definitions, you will notice something very interesting. Let me do it. Personal PCK is the knowledge of reasoning behind and planning for teaching a particular topic in a particular way for a particular purpose to particular students for enhanced student outcomes. And personal PCK and skills is the act of teaching a particular topic in a particular way for a particular purpose to particular students for enhanced students' outcomes. As you can see from these definitions, PCK is very particular in terms of its particularity to particular way, to particular purpose, particular students, and particular context. And in this consensus model, PCK is regarded as a standalone category within the professional knowledge base of teacher, which can be distinguished from subject matter knowledge or pedagogical knowledge. And PCK embraces a teacher knowledge, teacher action, and reasoning. And PCK is considered as topic specific to the teaching of a particular science topic. And PCK is labeled as personal PCK, which is different from the canonical topic-specific professional knowledge, which is shared by a group of teachers. And then the consensus model also repositions the idea of affective contextual factors, which is now considered as acting as a filter or amplifier, which influence the content and knowledge of personal PCK. And this model also highlights that personal PCK directly relates to students' learning outcome, which can be students' cognitive or affective outcome. This consensus model was further updated and refined in the more recent PCK Summit 2. And I was very lucky to be invited to attend this PCK Summit. And the purpose of this summit was to reach consensus on a model of PCK that is strongly connected with empirical data of varying nature, and which can be used as a framework for the design of PCK study. And we recognize some of the limitations of the 2015 consensus model, as this model did not do enough to unpack and represent the variable, the layer, and the complexity of PCK. And while the model differentiated between topic-specific professional knowledge, which is canonical and connective in nature, and from the personal PCK and skills, the distinction in terms of PCK was not sufficiently clear, and researchers struggled with the specific. And there was some impetus to redefine the model and to refine the model. And we did a lot of drawing on the whiteboard and also try to redraw the model. And here shows you the outcome of the PCK Summit 2, which is a PCK in relation to knowledge bases for teaching, a model that articulates the positions of PCK in relation to knowledge bases for teaching, and we call this the refined consensus model. And you can see this refined consensus model. And let me also try to give you 10 seconds to have a look at this refined consensus model. And let me highlight some of the new things that is articulated in this refined consensus model. First of all, this refined consensus model is centered around the practice of teaching. As you can see that teachers are engaged in the work of teaching. The teachers does planning, enactment, and reflection. And in this process, a teacher engages in pedagogical reasoning during the plan, teach, reflect cycle. And this new model also articulates 3 realms of PCK called collective PCK, personal PCK, and enacted PCK. As you can see in this model, enacted, personal, and collective. And here shows you what it means. For collective TCK, it refers to the knowledge that more than one person possesses, meaning that the knowledge is not private, but rather knowledge is public and held collectively. And for the enacted PCK, it is the specific knowledge and skills that is utilized by an individual teacher in a particular setting with a particular students or group of students, with the goal for those students to learn a particular concept, collections of concepts, or particular aspects of the discipline. And this is distinguished from the personal PCK, which is the cumulative PCK and skills of an individual teacher that reflect the teacher's own teaching and learning experiences along with the contribution of others. So in other words, personal PCK may not be enacted in practice. So this is the repertoire of PCK of a teacher. The new consensus model, the refined consensus model, also make it explicit that PCK have different grain size, and they are called discipline-specific PCK, topic-specific PCK, and concept-specific PCK. And it also underpins the importance of learning context, which can also serve as an amplifier or a filter that may influence individual teachers' PCK. So an individual may not process the collective PCK because of the learning context. And this model also highlights a two-way knowledge exchange process that takes place between the various concentric circles, with teacher beliefs serving as a filter or amplifier that can affect the knowledge exchange processes. And up till now, I have identified the major debates and also the progress towards consensus in the PCK concept. And the next question that I would like to address is, how can PCK be investigated empirically? And I'm drawing a point, a review chapter that I have published in the PCK Summit 2 book. And I would like to acknowledge the contributions of my collaborator, who is a retired academic at University of Waikato, Dr. Ann Hume. And together we wrote this review book chapter, which focuses on how science teachers' PCK is investigated in the field. This is a systematic literature review aiming to review, organize, integrate, and synthesize empirical investigations of science teachers' PCK to provide an overview of how the PCK concept is used, interpreted, and investigated. And we reviewed 99 articles published in 2008 to 2017, and we analyzed 99 articles. We focus our analysis in terms of 5 aspects: the research sample, the major research foci, the conceptualizations of PCK, the data source used in the study, and the approaches to determine teachers' PCK. And because of time limitations, I will focus on the part on number 3, number 4, and number 5. So in terms of how researchers conceptualize PCK, we noticed that a lot of the studies conceptualize PCK as a distinct category of teacher knowledge, which can be distinguished from subject matter knowledge or pedagogical knowledge or contextual knowledge. And the majority subscribe to the transformative model. About 1/3 of the study did not specify a PCK model. And some of these studies even did not clearly define the PCK component under investigations. And we find that the most commonly used PCK model was the transformative model by Magnuson and colleagues, or invariants. And if you can still remember, this is the Magnuson model that I showed earlier. It comprises 5 interacting PCK components.
I'm so sorry, Dr. Kennedy.
Yes.
5 minutes remain of your time. 5 minutes remains of your time.
Okay, and then there is a clear trend of linking to the consensus model of professional knowledge and skills. And we find that a lot of the studies only investigated all the PCK components within the Magnuson model, and seldom did the study investigated affective variables. And the most widely studied PCK components are knowledge of student understanding and knowledge of instructional strategies. In terms of the data source used for investigating PCK, we noticed that there are 4 major data sources. This includes written test, survey, questionnaire, teaching artifact, interview, and lesson observation. And surprisingly, about 37.4% of the study used only a single data source to investigate PCK. And we identified 2 approaches for determining PCK. The first approach involved self-report, and the second approaches involve teachers' performance in teaching tasks. And these 2 approaches actually assess different types of knowledge. For example, the self-report approach actually assess teachers' declarative knowledge, or and the performance in teaching tasks may assess teachers' knowledge in enacting certain skills. And here shows you this number of studies using approach 1. And you can see quite a number of studies use PCK tests. And for approach 2, focusing on the teacher's performance in teaching tasks, some of them examines a teacher action only in the classroom, whereas others only look at the artifacts. Most of them actually look at all of them, including teacher actions, teaching artifact, and teacher judgment and decisions. That is the verbal justifications of lesson design. And there are variations in terms of the performance that they have investigated, ranging from the performance in simulated lesson teaching task or in the real-life teaching in situ. For example, some researchers make use of lesson planning tasks to investigate teacher PCK. Or others just go to the teacher's classroom to look at how PCK is enacted in situ. And they range from investigating part of the teaching cycle or the whole teaching cycle. The analysis also find that for those studies that make use of simulated teaching tasks, they mostly focus on PCK that informs teachers' decisions in the lesson planning phase, but not the PCK that informs the decisions or actions of the teacher during the interactive phase, which is mostly related to the student learning experience. And we found that although many studies investigated PCK associated with the entire teaching cycle, seldom did these studies make explicit the PCK associated with each phase of the teaching cycle. In other words, we are not sure whether this PCK is associated with the interactive phase of teaching or the lesson planning phase. And there are a couple of issues that I would like to highlight from this review. We find that there is diverse interpretations of the PCK concepts, and this is often coupled with diverse and idiosyncratic terminology, and new terms were introduced and the meaning of the existing terms shifted. And in some study, the operationalizations of PCK component remain unclear. And the connections to the consensus model was often cosmetic and superficial rather than genuine and detailed. And we are also aware that the PCK model, the consensus model, is not specific about PCK compositions, and it implies an anything goes principle. And this lack of specificity may also contribute to the instability around the PCK concepts. And two more issues I would like to highlight concerning the investigations of PCK. We find that most studies focusing on the planning phase of the teaching cycle, whereas very few focus on the interactive phase of teaching. And there has been a lack of valid measurement that allows large-scale investigations of how science teachers apply the PCK in authentic classroom contexts and situations. Several knowledge gaps. Although we find a lot of comparative studies of PCK among mathematics teachers from different countries, both large scales and small scales, we don't have a lot of large scale comparative studies on science teachers PCK. And we also find very few longitudinal studies of PCK development within the reviewed study. Here come several opportunities. And because the consensus models articulate a clear link between teachers' PCK and student learning outcome, it would be important to provide more or stronger empirical evidence that articulates a link between teachers' PCK and student learning outcome, both cognitive and affective. And it's very important to gather more evidence or characterizations of teachers' flexibility in deploying the PCK in their interactions with students around content during the interactive phase of teaching. And finally, our field also needs new methodological approaches for investigating PCK that do justice to the complexity and the context-specific nature of PCK. That is more than a single PCK test. And here is the conclusions. And I have sketched the major debates and the progress towards the consensus within the PCK field in science education. And I identified two different approaches for investigating PCK, identifying some issues and knowledge gaps within the field. And thank you very much. And I would like to invite questions from the audience.
Okay, thanks Dr. Kennedy from the wonderful presentation. Then this is time for Dr. Erlia, please, person in charge, to show her curriculum vitae. Okay, Dr. Erlia Narolita, she is a lecturer and researchers in University of Jember, in particular from Biology Education Department. And then for bachelor degree, graduates from Biology Education, University of Jember. And then for the master degree from Bandung Institute of Technology. And then for the doctoral degree, graduates from Molecular Biotechnology Department, Hiroshima University, Japan. Then, next. Wait a minute, I'm sorry. And she have wrote so many publications in terms of journal article and also some books. And most of the journal article have published in reputable journal, for example, indexed by Scopus and Web of Science. That's all. Then Dr. Elia, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bevo. Okay, I will share my screen. Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks to the committee for giving me chance to share our work regarding STEM-based learning model, namely ELCC, identify, literature review, construct, create, and communicate to enhance creative thinking and collaboration skills of students on biotechnology course. First of all, I want to apologize if I overlook below because I use upper additional camera. Well, my slides are in my laptop. Okay, so biotechnology is a technology that utilizes biological systems, living organisms or part of living organisms to develop or create different products. Brewing and baking bread are examples of processes that fall within the concept of conventional biotechnology. For example, use of yeast as a living organism to produce the desired product. Well, the more modern form of biotechnology will generally involve more advanced modification of the biological system or organism. With the development of genetic engineering in 1970s, research in biotechnology developed rapidly because of the new possibility to make changes in the organism's genetic material or DNA. And today, biotechnology covers many different disciplines. For example, genetics, biochemistry, molecular biology, etc. And new technologies and products are developed every year within the areas of medicine. For example, development of new biofuel or biological treatment, or industrial biotechnology, that production of chemicals, paper, or textile and food. And if we see today, biotechnology use can be seen in almost every phase of life, including environmental products, medical products, for example, recombinant insulin, industrial product, enzymatic cleaners, for example, and agricultural products of GMOs. And the fact that biotechnology is all around means that the need for biotech professionals is growing fast. And that's on U.S. Department of Labor at 2017 state that this age of biotechnology has seen a projected growth of over 11% through 2026 for careers in biotechnology. And this is faster than average for all occupations, and it is similar as Prof. Jill said before. Then those all the reason why biotechnology is important and why it should be taught. But what does a biotech class look like, and what would teachers and students expect to gain? Yes, in biotech classes and labs, we will see students of all aptitudes and socioeconomic that do high level of relevant science, be curious and engage, and perform high-tech laboratory works, process and share data, practice critical thinking, as well as explore their place in the future. But what about in Indonesia or other developing countries? Okay. So in Indonesia, in Indonesia curriculum for elementary school, there is no biotechnology topics. Then for secondary school, biotechnology more emphasize on conventional term. And due to the limitation of facilities in secondary schools, it caused no laboratory or practicum activities in biotechnology topic, especially in for modern biotechnology. Then based on finding of Wahono et al. At 2018, almost 90% students had problems in understanding and applying biotechnology concept in their daily life. And meanwhile, from the teacher side, they get obstacle in teaching biotechnology, especially modern biotechnology, and it is the most challenging technology field to teach. This based on finding research by Borgerding et al. At 2013 and Utomo et al. At 2017. So in general, biotechnology in Indonesia is slow developing. And we can see based on the Global Biotechnology Innovation Score, the Indonesia score of 16.4 from 100, which place Indonesia in 52nd from 54 countries studied. So this condition shows the gap between industrial demand and current condition in Indonesia and certainly other developing countries, I think. So we propose a STEM-based learning model to give alternative teaching strategy in connecting industrial demand and school in simple learning model. So this model can be used in schools with limitation lab facilities. So as a teacher, they are responsible in teaching biotechnology correctly and educatively. Thus, they need to be equipped with strong principal concept, as well as the ability to teach concept or pedagogy accurately and appropriately by using technology in the biotechnology learning. We propose ELC learning model, identify, literature review, construct, create, and communicate, that developed from the engineering design process. We assume that this learning model can push the 4C skills, especially creative thinking and collaboration skills of students in biotechnology learning. The ELC learning model developed based on constructivism learning theory, which posits that individual knowledge is self-create and self-arrange. Okay, so in this, in our study, 113 respondents or students were selected as the subjects of this research. They were the students majoring in biotechnology, and they were divided into two classes involving in biology class and a natural science class. The total number of students was different. The number of students of biology is 41 students. Then natural science was 72 students. The data collections method used for collaboration skill assessment was observation. Well, for assessing creative thinking skill, use test method and student worksheets. The validation and practicality of ELC learning models were also examined. Then the indicators of creative thinking skills use fluency, flexibility, originality, and elaboration. Fluency refers to the ability to generate ideas during the creative thinking process. Then flexibility means that the student can leave behind their old ideas and adopt new ideas or new ways of thinking. It can also refer to the various ideas developed by the students. And originality means that the students can come up with novel and unique ideas. While elaboration means adding more detailed information to existing information to create more complex answer. And creative thinking skills can be developed if students have opportunities to develop these different kinds of thinking related skills. So the students need to develop the ability to think outside the box, which involve new ways of thinking and generating creative ideas. While for collaboration skills, the aspect consists of contribution, time management, problem solving, cooperation, and investigation technique. The score rank from 1 to 4 using a Likert scale. Then the results show that the validation of ELC model and its instructional designs are module contents were very beneficial. This could directly use on biotechnology learning. We can see this from the score, more than 80%. So it's a fall in strong valid criteria. Then during the learning process, students did 5 syntax of ELC3. Namely, the first stage, identify. At this stage, students identify the problems from article related to plant transgenic. This the problems that we provide, and they discuss within groups. The lecture encouraged students to actively screening the milieu around to enrich their analysis. And students raised several questions in discussion with their peers to try to solve the problems. And the formation of this one, yes, this one, the formation of small discussion groups increased students' collaboration skills. Students were required to interact with each other and exchange ideas to solve the problems. These activities are not only improving the creative thinking skills, but also enforcing collaboration skills. The second stage is literature review, where students needed to find literature or information to solve the problems, and this activity had to be done in process of problem solving, so the theories produced were relevant to the investigation that was being carried out. We provide some source as a reference for students, but we encourage students to browse other resources. This is the activity when they browse some resource. Then the third stage was constructing. So a student designed a prototype aiming for the solution of the problem encountered. Its students developed their ideas in the form of recombinant DNA prototype, because of the problem is about plant transgenic. Okay, this is the sample of student work of design DNA recombinant. We also prepare a plasmid construction paper, then gene to be inserted, as well as a list of restriction enzymes that a student can be choose to make DNA recombinant, and also general instruction to construct DNA recombinant. The construct and create stage trigger creative thinking, where students try to design a prototype with ideas and pattern of thinking that were different from their peers. The prototype contained a key for solving the problems, and the solution were in the form of previously unrelated ideas. Then after design the prototype, the student will create the prototype, which could be in the form of DNA recombinant for the problem about plant transgenic. The construct and create stage lead to creative thinking pattern for the students. This activity of creating improve diverse thinking skill even in the same problem. So each student will have different ideas to solve the problems. This is the sample of a prototype of recombinant DNA created by students with the paper that we already provided. We also give students the project to design plasmid and decided restriction enzyme and integrated into plasmid using online software. We use a Bensley. This one when the students work with Bensley, the online software for biotechnology. Then this is the sample from design of DNA recombinant by student using Bensley. Then the last stage in ELC3 learning model was communicate, which students were assessed on how they communicated their work in groups in front of the class. And this activity was very effective in facilitating interaction between students and lecturers. It also enabled interaction between students regarding how they should behave in front of the class, and how they divided assignments among its members in group for the presentation. So it can create optimal collaboration among them. Then all the activities from the identify to communicate, those all activities brought to a very good result. So here we can see the achievement of students on creating thinking skills. So mostly in excellent category in all indicators except for elaboration that fall in good category. Both in biology class and natural science class, both are with excellence category for creative thinking skills. Then for the collaboration skill, we also can see that all indicators are for in excellent, mostly in excellent category as well, except for investigation technique and contribution in a natural science class. It's, in a good category, but I think it's still good. Then at the end of the semester, we got the excellent result from the lecturer and students concerning to the easiness of implementation of ELC3 learning models. We can see. So in small group of class. So before we try in a big class in a classroom, we try to in small group students, only 9 students, and the results criteria in excellent and practical for the ALC3. And when we go to the big class in this biology class and what is a natural science class, we also got excellent criteria for the ELC3 implementation. So we can conclude that students with different academic abilities develop creative thinking skills independently only if the learning environment provides an opportunity to do so. Therefore, the high level of creative thinking skills of students in this study was because of the ELC learning models granted students with a learning environment that provided opportunities to develop ideas. Thus, from this study, we concluded that ELC3 can be as an alternative learning model in biotechnology, especially for remote area or suburban area of schools with limited facilities. I think that's all my presentation about our work. Comments and questions are welcome. Thank you. I back to Dr. Bevo.
Thanks, Dr. Elia, for a nice presentation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is time for Q&A session. You can ask either to Dr. Kennedy or Dr. Elia. And don't forget to raise your hand and to ask directly, or you can post it in the chat room. Again, please don't forget to mention your name and your institution. Okay, here it is. We already have this question. The first one, can STEM education be applied in other disciplines too? This is for Dr. Kennedy or Dr. Elia? Oh, okay. Perhaps for Dr. Elia, because this is about STEM education. And then the second question from Nurul Sulaiman from Mula Warman University, Indonesia. Dear Dr. Ken, thank you for wonderful presentation. Would you elaborate more how the development of PCK in the pre-service teacher program? Probably some practice in Hong Kong will help a lot of clarify this concept. And then the last one from Krishna Pamanto. What is the basic skill for using PCK method in the classroom? I think all of them are for Dr. Kennedy. Yeah.
Do you want me to respond to question 2 and question 3 now, or I can wait?
You can address it right now.
Sorry?
You can address it right now. You can answer.
Okay. So maybe I can talk about question 2 first. So as far as I understand these questions, this is asking about how the development of PCK in pre-service teachers program looks like. And according to international literature, so teaching experience is a very important component that can lead to PCK development. By teaching experience, we mean coupled with structured reflection. And a lot of the teacher education program has purposely designed learning experiences in such a way that allows student teachers to interact with students and to reflect on those experiences to foster the development of PCK. And I also noticed that a lot of researchers have created tools and scaffolds which try to enhance PCK developments in science teachers. For example, content representation is one example of such tools. So such tools and scaffolds actually focus student teachers in thinking about content or unpacking the content in a pedagogically viable way, so they to improve or to enhance the PCK. And in my university, I have been trying to make use of videos to promote teachers' PCK development. So trying to unpack the PCK that informs what the teacher do in the classroom by analyzing the teacher practice captured in video clips of teaching practice. And I hope this can address some of the questions. And shall I go to question 3? Okay, thank you. And for the question 3, if I understand this question correctly, so this is the questions related to how we can investigate PCK and what are the basic skills. And I guess if you want to take a situated perspective in investigating PCK, you yourself need to have good PCK so that you can notice the PCK in action. And of course, you also need to interview the teachers and try to help teachers unpack the tacit knowledge and to make the tacit knowledge explicit in the interview process. And this, of course, requires some skills from the side of the investigator or the researcher. So, and I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, I think that is the great answer, Dr. Kennedy.
Thank you.
And, I think for the first question, this is for Dr. Elia.
Sorry. Directly answer, Bifo? Dr. Bifo?
Yes.
Okay, can STEM be applied in other disciplines too? If we concern to the STEM definition, so STEM is interdisciplinary field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So these 4 disciplines that embedded into one interdisciplinary concept. But STEM also can apply into other disciplines such as social science, or maybe economy or other disciplines. But it depends of us to choose the context that appropriate to use a STEM approach in teaching and learning process. I think it's all, Dr. Bifo.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Elia. Do we still have another question by chat room, or if anybody would like to ask directly, you can raise your hand and unmute your microphone. 1 minute, I think we have. Okay, we have one question. How the student will develop problem solving, creativity, and critical analysis skill while studying? Okay, I think this question for Dr. Kennedy. I will repeat it. How the student will develop problem solving, creativity, and critical analysis skill while studying?
So it's asking about students, right? So I guess it is not my question. It's not the question for me.
Okay, this for I think this for Dr. Elia.
Yes.
With Dr. Elia.
Okay, so as I said before, to push the problem solving, creative thinking, and critical thinking students, we can provide a problem to the students and give them chance to identify what is the problem encountered, then use their previous knowledge. They try to try to find the problem solving. Then using literature review, they can add more or new knowledge to give another information that can construct their problem solvers. The otherwise we can use by try to post a day to discuss with other students, so they can share the knowledge to broaden their problem solving to solve the problem they encounter. I think we can give them project that I already mentioned before. We can give them project. So by do the project, they can push the or enforce the critical thinking skills that they have. I do not answer the question or not. You can give feedback.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Elia. We have another question. I think someone raised hand. Riz Querda. Do you would like to ask directly, or Riz Querda? Okay, Riz Querda. Just unmute your microphone and then read it. Okay. Riz Querda. Okay, Riz Querda, do you like to ask something? Okay, we have another one. This is for Dr. Kennedy Chan. What is the relation PCK and classroom management expertise?
Okay, this is a very good question because PCK concern the teaching of particular content. So, and for classroom management skills or classroom management knowledge, so this is more general and generic in nature that can be applied across different disciplines. So we tend to classify classroom management as a teacher general pedagogical knowledge. And so this can be applied across disciplines and across different subjects. So we call this general pedagogical knowledge. And PCK is the blending of general pedagogical knowledge and subject matter knowledge. So this is for teaching particular content. So it's a little bit different from PCK.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. And okay, we have another one. This can apply in teaching agriculture. This is for Dr. Elia. Please, Dr. Elia.
Okay, thank you. Yes, of course. STEM education can apply in teaching agriculture, and I think it's quite close. And what is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in agriculture is already used in broad in broad area. So, for example, in agriculture, in agri-science educations, they use a STEM approach in teaching and learning. Because in agriculture, I think it's also a multidisciplinary learning in agriculture, such as food production or food processing, or what is insecticide construction, and plant engineering. I think it's quite close with agriculture field. That's all.
Okay. Do they can respond back to us? I mean, okay, if anybody have a response, you can ask or give a response in the chat room. And then, okay, we have another question from Pudi Astuti. Right hand. Do we have another raise hand? Yes, Guarda. Okay, let's Guarda. The time is yours. Okay, no problem. Question from Puji Astuti from Indonesia. In pedestrian community, commonly elementary school students have special skill from their daily activities. For example, they can understand the from the performance. For example, students can know specifically which order size. When the organization experience is other, there is could you understand clearly the question? Dr. Kennedy?
Oh, yes. I'm thinking it's the question that is about whether this is PCK.
Yeah.
Okay. So so this is actually an understanding of students' prior experiences. Can I say it this way? So it's an understanding of student prior experience, and if can be leveraged in teaching particular content, then that can be counted as PCK. So I think that would be viewed from this way, and because that can be leveraged for teaching a particular topic, then we can also regard it as knowledge of student understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, wait a minute. And I have another question from Jennifer Pck. I'm so sorry if the pronunciation is not good. Good day, sir. I think I cannot finish the webinar. I only have 5 minutes. Oh, no problem. I hope you can send me the attendance link. 5 minutes. Okay. We have another question, but it's still in Indonesian language. 1 minute. This is for Erlia, Dr. Erlia Narulita. Could we perform ILC3 learning model and to another topic of biology, perhaps except the biotechnology?
Sorry. Okay, thank you for the question from okay. Hello, okay, you can hear me? Okay, yes, of course, you can use ELC3 learning model beyond of the biotechnology topics. So because of, I think this this stage or the syntax is appropriately for another topics of biology, or even on physics or chemistry or mathematics. I think it is appropriate to use. I use this for biotechnology due to in our study program there is no facilities that appropriate or suitable to do laboratory work. So that's why I try to use this model, so students can have experience how to make recombinant DNA. Even it's only used by paper, but I think it's easy tools to find around us. So I just try to use tools that we can find easily. So you can.
Thank you, Dr. Elia. In the chat room, private chat room, I have another question. This is for Dr. Kennedy. Is it fair to define PCK as the way we understand the materials and the way we determine the correct method to teach the material or content? Is it fair to define PCK as the way we understand the materials and the way we determine the correct method to teach the materials?
So I would think that PCK is the professional knowledge. So during the process of determining the correct materials or the methods or selecting the right way to teach or the best way, so to speak, then we draw upon our professional knowledge. So I would not say PCK is the way we determined. I would say that was professional knowledge, which is being drawn upon when you are making decisions in selecting what to teach and how to teach. So that means PCK informs teaching decisions. So it's a little bit different, I would say.
Okay, great. Thank you. We got
it.
Okay, perhaps the second slide or the third slide. Okay, this one. Okay, number 9. This is special for Dr. Elia. What do you think about STEM? STEM with art.
Yes. STEAM or STEARM is I think this try to complete STEM with art. So some researcher from, I think, STEM is originally from Korea. They complete STEM with integrating arts. So they try to so it will allow students to connect their learning in this critical area together with art practice. So art practice elements and design principle and standard to provide the whole palette of learning at their disposal. So STEAM remove limitation and replace them with innovation of the arts. It's also good, I think.
Thank you, Dr. Elia. And we have 3 questions left before we end the session. This is special for Dr. Kennedy. How do we apply PCK for our students without face-to-face interaction because of the pandemic?
This is a really wonderful question, and I'm waiting for an empirical study related to the PCK teacher draw on when they are teaching online. So so basically, I think on Zoom, teachers also will engineer discussions among on Zoom. And then this also demands us to draw upon our pedagogical content knowledge. And of course, by thinking about what and how to teach, we also need to draw upon our PCK when we are designing the online teaching environment for our students. And I guess that is all related to our professional knowledge, that is PCK, when we want to engender our students to learn particular concepts or content. I think it's require higher level of PCK compared with face-to-face. That is what I guess.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy, and thank you for Professor Ed Mathieu for the nice question. Okay, we have 3 questions for Dr. Erlia. The first one, what is the difference of creative thinking and creativity? Please give me explanation. And then the second one, what is relation between STEM approach and the culture of the country where it is applied? And then the last one, okay, how can I teach STEM to kids 6 to 9 years? Take an account currently limitation. Yeah, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Good question for all the participants. So the difference of creative thinking and critical thinking. So actually, creative thinking and critical thinking is I think works together, but it still have a difference. So creative thinking is a way of looking at problems or situations from a new perspective to conceive of something new or original. While critical thinking is the logical or sequential disciplines process of rationalizing or analyzing, evaluating, and interpreting information, make informed judgment or decision. So we can if the creative thinking tries to create something new, while critical thinking seeks to assess validity or something that already exists. It's the key of difference. Creative thinking is generative, while critical thinking is convergent. Then creative thinking usually is focused on possibilities, while critical thinking is focused on probability. So if we use critical thinking, analytical, logical, objective, reasoning, it's a part of critical thinking. But creative thinking, imaginative, speculating, or subjective is a part of creative thinking. It's for the first question. Then the second question. Relation between STEM approach and the culture of the country where it's applied. So yes, of course, the STEM applied, the STEM application. The STEM application is, of course, is depend on where the country apply. But STEM and local culture are contextually related on consideration in order to design some product in the hands-on and hands-on activity. So the culture can be as a context in the STEM approach.
Okay, and then we have in fact we have other 2 questions. I think this is the last question, and we can stop the Q&A.
Oh, okay, Pak.
Ini yang menyambung berkaitan di depannya plat nomor P1606 IE HP terus kita membaca tuh IG disuruh kita soalnya ada masalah
Okay, we have to question for Dr. Andia. How do we apply STEM in teaching language? How do we apply STEM in teaching language? This is from Nur Wahyuni, Kabupaten Maros. And then the last one, what do you think if we apply integrated STEM education with or together with religion, for example, Al-Quran? That's the question. So we have two questions. Please, Dr. Earlier. The first question is, how do we apply STEM in teaching language? And the second one, what do you think about religion integrated STEM education? Religion.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the questions. So, STEM in language. Actually, I never thought STEM in language, but I will try to answer the question. So, for the language, I think it rather just wait a minute. What is included in the assessment thing rather than context for language. So in STEM in religion. No? Yes, religion. So teaching STEM for language, I think this in some I read in some article that English teachers, some of them already use STEM in learning activities. So they become language to make students more understand about the context of the STEM. I mean, this one I found that English learning in STEM subject, they use STEM subject in assessment and provide guidance to improve learning outcomes in a social context and in academic language. They delineate with the mathematics and science standard. So integrate English as English or another language as instruction with core of instructional program in STEM. But maybe some of you already use STEM in language. You can help me to make answer more precisely.
Thank you, Dr. Akia. One question needs to answer from Joseph Valero. How can I teach STEM to kids 6 and 9 years?
Thank you for the question, and good question. Yes, but I think STEM is more easily used in kids because I think in kids in age 6 to 9, they have growth, creativity, and critical thinking. So, and if we refers to the STEM, STEM concept, we no need to high technology to apply STEM. So they can just if you know Rubik, what is Rubik? Am I right? Rubik. We can use, just for example, we can use Rubik to use some concept in teaching kids, for example, to teach about Rubik in mathematics, Rubik, how to say Rubik. Okay, Rubik. We can use to teach a concept about what is mathematics about probability. Sorry, about probability. So we can use Rubik or stone maybe. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, yes. You can use stone with different colors, for example, to teach about probability to the kids. It is just for example. So I just want to say that for kids, I think it's more easier because they can play using STEM kit, using kit, any kind of kit around us. We can use as tools because the kid is still pure, so the creativity and critical thinking is still broad, and we can enhance or improve. That's all I think.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Aditya. We have another question, but I think it's from separate Smiths. I think it's quite the same with the previous question. How can we use STEM effectively with the third grade student? I think that's already addressed by Dr. Elia together with the Joseph Valero question for kids. And okay, I think it's enough. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy and Dr. Elia for the great responses and nice presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, we are reaching the end of this webinar. I'm going to sum up the discussion today. Okay. The first one, in recent years, STEM education has become a trending topic in various scientific educational practice and publications, and then diversify students with STEM experiences by many ways is important. And another one, PCK is very particular, very specific, and most of FOSI research PCK have done on the topic of nature on teacher PCK. And the last one, ELC3 is an alternative learning model in biotechnology for downtowns or suburban area of school. Finally, my apologies if I have made any mistakes. Mr. Anjar Putra Utomo, the Master of Ceremony, I give back the floor to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for Mr. Befo Wahuna, PhD, and all of the honorable speakers here, Professor Jidan Roharik and Dr. Kennedy Chan, also for Dr. Eliana Rita. Then those are the agendas we presented to you, and we hope you have been enjoying yourself at this event so far. We're very honored to have all of you with us here this afternoon. For your information, all of the participants can directly get the A certificate once they have filled the presence and feedback form in the chat room. Thus, make sure you have done with it. Okay. Lastly, we have had a productive and inspiring time together. Also, this event about to come to the end. I hope you have found the presentation on this event are informative and helpful. Now we will close the international webinar. Let us all be guided by all the things we have learned and heard throughout this event and be able to see and influence our future, which really means please forgive us for our shortcoming. Till we meet again, perhaps in the next international webinar. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Dr. Kennedy, Professor Jillian, Dr. Erlia. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. See you again. Okay.
Thank you.